Let's now talk about deixis and reference, which are two important concepts of pragmatic meanings. Deixis means pointing via language. By using these expressions, we point in language to make or convey certain meanings. And these expressions do get their meanings from the context. They may not stand alone without a context. And these expressions are also called indexicals or indexicality of language because they are considered indexes of the meaning which are conveyed in a certain context. There could be some examples of these indexicals, for example, here, there, come, go, then, pronouns like you, he, she, it, etc. For example, when I say come here, so here actually points out a certain place when it is uttered. So this could be considered as an indexical. Some modifiers can be used for didactic purposes, for pointing in language. In this regard, we could see the demonstratives like this that could be used to point towards a certain event or an object which conveys certain meaning in the language or linguistic expressions. For example, we could say this dog, that woman, etc. So when we say this dog, it specifies the dog and it conveys a certain pointing meaning in the language. Some verbs may also perform the same action. In this regard, two typical examples could be used like come and go. When I say come or go, it has inherent meanings of direction, because when I would say come, it shows or it demands where to come. So when somebody listens to this word come, to whom I am saying this, he would understand that where he or she has to come. So come or go, even when they are uttered in a lonely phrase, they convey certain meanings of direction. Therefore, they could be considered as didactic expressions in themselves. There could be certain kinds of these didactic expressions. There are three major kinds of deixis, and the first and important one is person deixis. These deixis convey meanings typically in terms of pronouns or other common nouns. For example, him, them, those, Khan, Qureshi, they all act. Khan is delivering his lecture to the class. So Khan is being used to point out a certain person who may be a teacher in a classroom. So, and the typical examples could be found in three-part divisions of pronouns. For example, first person, I, we, second person, you, or third person, he, she, they, etc. So they all are used to point out certain things or persons in language. Spatial deixis, they are also called place deixis. They are used to refer to certain place in language. For example, we could say here, there, near, that. So they can also be used as didactic expression to point out a certain place in language. We have temporal or time deixis. They point out time in language. For example, now or then. Now usually refer to present time, and then refers to past or future time. So we have these distal meanings in language conveyed by these expressions as well. There are some psychological bases of these temporal deixis as well, because sometimes time is in our mind and not in its actual situation. For example, when we say coming week, so the impression of coming week is in the mind. So temporal deixis could be based on psychological understanding. And the choice of verb is quite traditional when we convey temporal deixis. For example, we use present tense for a proximal form and past tense for the distal form of meanings. Reference is another important concept. It's an act by a speaker, and a speaker uses a reference in order to convey a certain meanings to the hearer. He wants the hearer to understand that particular meaning or a referent when he uses a reference. It's not the words that refer, it's the people who refer. And a same word could be used for multiple references. So it depends on the intention of the speakers, what he wants to refer to, and how he intends it to be done. We could use proper nouns to refer things. And as I said, for each word or phrase, there is a range of references. References could also be divided in various kinds. For example, we have anaphoric references. Anaphoric references are those which are found in the text. And these references could further be divided into anaphoric or cataphoric references. Anaphoric references are those where the referent lies prior to the text. For example, prior in the text. For example, respect a man, he will do the more. When we say respect a man, he will do the more, he is a referring expression here, and he is referring to man, which has already been said in the text. In cataphoric reference, the referent usually comes later in the text. For example, when I met her, Mary looked ill. So her is referring to Mary. The word Mary is coming later. So we could see this is a typical example of a cataphoric reference. In contrast, anaphoric or exophoric references are those which used those entities or refer to those entities which are not available in the text. Rather, they are available in the context. When I say I like her, so there is no description of her before or after the text, but her is somebody which is in the context. So exophoric references are those which are beyond the text but still in the context.